Hey guys, Oliver here, and welcome back to our Switch series. In this video, we're going to learn about the switch statement and then loop control statements. Let's get started. Now, the first thing we're going to cover is a switch statement. The switch statement allows us to consider a specific variable or a specific value and then compare it against several possible matching patterns, okay? And then based on what it deems as true or what case works, it'll perform that respective code. So let's go ahead and create an age variable, set this equal to 16, or whatever you want. And now we're going to perform a switch statement on this variable. So switch age. Now the switch statement basically allows us to not use so many if, else if statements, and instead just compare our variable to specific cases. So case 1, or in this case, case 14. If my age variable is equal to 14, I'm going to print out and say you are 14, okay? My second case is going to be case 15. If I'm 15, I'm going to say you are 15. And last but not least, we have a default case. If none of these cases are true, we have a default case. I'm not sure how old you are. Okay? So that is switch statements in a nutshell. I'm going to go ahead and tab this just for proper indentation. But this is how it works. We switch a variable. This variable can have any value. And then each case deems a specific value that it could be. Case 14, is my age equal to 14? If it's not, go to the next case. Is my age equal to 15? If it's not, go to the default case. Default is like the else statement if an else clause. If none of these cases work out, what do I default to? My default is, I'm not sure how old you are. If I make my age 15 and run this, I'll go ahead and get, you are 15. So that's switch statement, guys, okay? You will use this in some scenarios when you have a variable that you need to check for different values, but most of the time you can just use an if, else clause, and that does the job. Switch statements are just used for cleaner code, and honestly, in my opinion, they look much, much better. Alright, fantastic. The next thing we're going to be talking about are going to be these, what we call loop control statements, okay? Loop control statements are used in loops to perform specific functions. For example, we have our for loop, right? For I in 1.10, we normally print out I. This works perfectly fine. But what if when I is 5, I want to stop my loop? In Swift and in most programming languages, to stop a loop, you use the break function, okay? So if my I is equal to 5, I want to stop the loop. I'm going to go ahead and say break. So break is the first loop control statement we're learning, and break allows us to just end the loop, okay? So let's go ahead and run this, and let's give it a few seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it stops. Awesome. So that's what break does, okay? It just terminates the loop. Now, we haven't talked about nested loops yet, but nested loops are basically one loop inside of the other. So for I in 1.10, for j in 1.5, if j is equal to 3, go ahead and break. When I use the break function over here, the break only breaks out of the loop it's in. So break will break out of this for loop, but the outside for loop will still run. All right, so that's one thing that I wanted to mention, but that's break for you. Break is just used to end the for loop, terminate whatever loop it's in. You can also use it in a while loop. The second control statement is the continue statement. The continue statement tells us that, hey, skip the rest of the code underneath and go to the next iteration. For example, let's go ahead and say for I so for I in 1.10, okay, we need to put the continue statement somewhere. So if I is equal to 5, continue, okay, otherwise just print out I. Now let's see what happens. So for I in 1.10, if I is equal to 5, continue, print I. And if you notice in a print down below, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So what the continue function over here does is it checks to see, okay, if my I is equal to 5, continue. Continue will skip all the code underneath and go to the next iteration of the loop. So if I said if I is equal to 5 or I equal to 6, this instead will make it so that if I is equal to 5 or 6, it will never get printed out. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 7. So break and continue in Swift are your two main sort of loop control statements, okay? Break breaks out of the loop, and continue skips the rest of the loop and goes to the next iteration. Alright, fantastic job guys. That was the gist of this lecture. We covered switch statements and we covered loop control statements. Thanks so much for listening guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.